Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being here today. And thank you for your service. There's a famous movie line, I'm sure you've heard it. Deserves got nothing to do with it. Deserves got nothing to do with it. And I don't think you deserve to have to be here today to answer questions about immigration. Because I don't think you're calling the shots. I think those shots are being called out of the White House. I think they ought to be here. The people determining our border policy, in your opinion, are they just incompetent, or do they believe in open borders?
Senator, I'm intensely and immensely proud to be a member of President Biden's cabinet, and for the policies that are promulgated, I should be held accountable.
Right. I looked last night at President Biden's platform when he ran for president. He supported amnesty for the 11.7 million people in our country illegally. He promised he would end the Remain in Mexico program. He promised he would end the safe third country agreements. He promised he would get rid of the border wall. He promised to encourage sanctuary cities, and he said, I'm not going to deport people. Can we agree that you don't have to be Mensa material to understand that's an open border policy?
Senator, a few of your recitations, if I may respectfully submit, were not accurate portrayals of the president's policy. He did not
I looked up his platform last night. It's right there. I mean, here's what I believe on immigration.
Senator, again, I would respectfully disagree with your characterization of the president's policies. So, for example...
well, let me ask you this. Okay, you say he didn't say this. The surge that we're having at the border, the 1.7 million people that have come into our country illegally, and the Washington Post says it's another 1,000 who are undetected. The president says that happens every single solitary year. Is he wrong on that or right on that?
Senator, we encounter many, many people at the border every year. The number that we have encountered of different individuals this year is at a historic level.
It's like the highest in 60 years, right?
As I mentioned earlier, I'm not familiar with the time frame, but it is certainly a historically high number, Senator.
Okay. Well, your administration has released thousands of people into our country who are COVID positive, have you not?
Senator, as I mentioned earlier, it is our policy to test and, as necessary, isolate and quarantine.
I know, but you've still released thousands who are positive, haven't you?
There have been individuals who have been released. And by the way, those individuals, just to be clear, because there's a misperception, those individuals who are not immediately expelled or removed under expedited processes are placed into immigration enforcement proceedings.
Right, right.
They are
but I'm talking about COVID.
Appear in court and stand before a judge.
Right.
And if they don't have a claim under law to remain in the United States, they are removed.
Your department has released thousands of people into this country illegally who are drug dealers, haven't you?
I'm sorry, Senator?
Your department has released thousands of people illegally into this country who are drug dealers, haven't you?
I'm not familiar with what you've just articulated. It is our policy that if an individual is a drug dealer and we encounter and apprehend that individual at the border, and the individual poses a public safety threat, and there are not conditions that are available to us to ensure the safety of the American
But how do you know if 1,000 a day, according to the Washington Post, are coming in undetected?
If I may, just to finish my statement.
I'm sorry.
If there are not conditions that can secure the safety of the American people, that individual is detained, is placed in immigration custody.
Right. We know the superlative job y'all are doing. Your department has released thousands of people into this country illegally who have criminal records, haven't you?
Senator, individuals who are apprehended at the border are subject to a number of different paths. They can be expelled under Title 42 of the U.S. Code under the CDC's Public Health Authority. They can be placed into expedited
Mr. Secretary, I've got limited time, and I understand the procedure.
I know, but
I'm just trying to get you to answer my questions. Your administration, the Biden administration, has released into our country people coming across the border, thousands of them, who have criminal records. Isn't that the case?
Senator, I'm not aware of thousands of individuals with criminal records who are released into the interior of the United States.
All right, let me try another one.
Who are not
Your department has released into our country thousands of people who have promptly gone on welfare. Isn't that the case?
I don't believe that individuals who are unlawfully present in the United States qualify for welfare, but that is something that I'm happy to follow.
You ever been to California?
I grew up for most of my life in California.
Okay, check their rolls.
I wasn't born in this country.
Yes, sir, I know. And I think we ought to tell the Cuban-American success story every chance we get.
Thank you.
I'm about to run out of time. Our Vice President Harris, our border czar, what kind of grade would you give her?
Vice President Harris is not the border czar. Vice President Harris has been asked by the President of the United States to focus on root causes.
Okay, let me answer this quickly in my last few seconds. When's the last time you talked to her about securing the border?
Several weeks ago.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy.
On time. I want you to recognize that.
I sure do. You get an A+. Senator
Thank you.
Booker?
Yeah, thank you very much for being here, Secretary Mayorkas. I want to thank you and the incredible professionals, thousands of work under your command, and thank them for their work and their dedication to our country. I want to start off by looking at the American food system, which is savagely broken. It's hurting everybody from driving incredible, staggering numbers of independent family farmers out of business. It's hurting the end users. We're a nation where just 2% of our ag subsidies go to fruits and vegetables, which we're told to eat the majority of. It's a system that's hurting everyone. But I want to zero in on what's happening with people who are food workers, many of them who are immigrants, many of them who are undocumented immigrants. In your opening statement, you said, a reference to an October 12th memo called Worksite Enforcement, and you said the strategy is to protect the American labor market, the conditions of the American worksite, and the dignity of the individual. I'm wondering just about the threat of deportation and how that's serving potentially as a deterrent to immigrant workers who might otherwise speak up about unsafe conditions. I know you're familiar with the Mississippi raids targeting poultry workers, for example. About 2 years ago, where 680 workers were swept up in those raids in the aftermath of a $3.75 million settlement with the EEOC, and their charges were everything from sexual harassment, discrimination, real exploitation of these immigrant workers. And so I guess the question I'd like to know is that as you focus on civil enforcement on these unscrupulous workers who are putting people almost in like slavery-like conditions, or at least undermining their dignity, what, if anything, can the DHS do to incentivize and encourage immigrant workers to report abuses in order to protect their rights and defend the labor standards of everyone?
Senator, thank you so much for raising this issue. We've spent a considerable amount of energy focused on it. We have promulgated a suite of policies to get at the very heart of the issue that you have raised. Number one, you referenced our worksite enforcement policy, which focuses on the unscrupulous employers that exploit the vulnerabilities of those unlawfully present in the United States. We also promulgated a policy that our immigration enforcement tools cannot be used in retaliation for the assertion of workplace rights. Third, we promulgated a policy extending to individuals who do assert their rights deferred action or other tools so that they can actually advance their interests, advance their rights without fear of removal from the United States. We have a suite of measures.
And what,
we
can
have
you be more
taken.
specific